This video contains spoilers for the Falcon and the Winter Soldier episode 3, as well as potential spoilers for future episodes. This week, we're introduced to the city of Madripoor, as well as seeing the return of Baron Zemo and Sharon Carter. Whereas WandaVision, the main question we discussed was, where is Mephisto? This one, our main theme seems to be, who is the villain? In the first episode, we talked about how Zemo has his grand plan to destroy everything. Then in our second episode, we kind of brought US Agent into the equation and say how he is a secret villain. And in this episode, we're going to debate whether Sharon Carter is actually the power broker and the secret third villain of this show. So everyone, please strap in and welcome back to another episode of This week, instead of a summary, Professor Carnes will share with us some of his favorite quotes from the episode. So Professor Carnes, if you would like to get us started.
Thanks, Harry. All right, here's a recap of the episode with only no context quotations. The first one is an easy one. Do you know who I am? Then, okay, Zemo, where do we start? I am a Baron, Sam. James, you have to become someone you claim is gone. Winter Soldier, attack. Who's Sam? Sharon, we need your help, please. Wow, she's kind of awful now. I did what no other scientist since Erskine was able to do. You're not going to move your seat up, are you? The power broker is going to come begging. If we get the job done, do you really think they're going to sweat us on the how? This is the only language these people understand. And the best line of the episode, I am here for Zemo. If you didn't watch the episode, go back and rewatch it because you missed a lot of fantastic content this week.
Wow, almost every single awesome quote from the episode, you have covered them all. That is so great, Professor Carnes. So I wanted to bring us back, leading from last week's discussion about John Walker being a villain. We do see that he shows even more of a villainous side at the start of this episode. And he shows that side of aggression. I know last week we talked about how his personality is very volatile and that he easily loses his cool and he does violent things. And this is a slight hint of that. And I think it's only going to get worse from now on. And I think even his friend Battlestar starts to realize that something is wrong with Walker.
I have to say, my big prediction from our last episode, that US Agent is going to be redeemed in the end, looking worse and worse every time we see him on screen. This was a rough one for my theory. So I'm not sure I'm going to be able to keep, pushing that idea going forward.
I also think that by storming the facilities that supposedly has the super soldier serum, I think it supports our theory that the US Agent does want the super soldier serum to become a super soldier by himself, which makes me think that he's going to be manipulated by the mastermind of everything, which from this episode, I still kind of feel like Zemo is up to no good. Don't let his appearances, confuse you. I still think Zemo's evil, but I also think the mastermind that's becoming clearer in this episode is the power broker. So do we still support our theory from last week that there is this sort of villain triangle with Zemo, Power Broker, and US Agent going around in this series?
I am now kind of questioning like US Agent and Zemo working together, because I think one thing that I really walked away from Zemo in this episode was kind of like that monologue he went into of like how we put heroes up on like this pedestal, and it kind of like erases like their flaws from them. Like we ignore their flaws. So I don't know if he would be actually like okay with working with US Agent. I see them more as like definitely like would actually like work against each other really. Unless like, I don't know, US Agent from the beginning was already like corrupted with him. But I don't know that. Now I'm gonna go like on a tangent here with that. But yeah, that monologue really spoke to me, and it really showed how US Agent was really going through that route of like showing his flaws and like through his power, and he's letting like the power get to him and really letting his flaws go, which really like goes up to Zemo's point and makes Zemo again those kind of villains that you're kind of like, man, he's like kind of right, which I really love about Marvel. So yeah, but I don't know. I'm kind of questioning now that Zemo and US Agent alliance, but I don't know what you guys think.
I'm sort of questioning the Zemo Power Broker alliance too, because one question I did walk away with the episode with was why, when they were in the bar in Magiport, did the Power Brokers sort of just a guy come to Zemo and be like, "You're not welcome here." Like, why is Zemo unwelcome in the Power Brokers territory specifically?
I had a similar thought. My sense is that Zemo is trying to play people against each other. He's trying to sort of reactivate the Winter Soldier, really pushing Bucky to, kind of nurture his violent side. I think it's very likely that he'll, that he's got a plan that somehow involves US Agent, or that he will. But after this episode, I think I share your sense, Sofia and Olivia, that there isn't, currently a villain sort of cooperation happening here. Olivia's right. There's clearly friction between Power Broker and Zemo, and Sofia's right. US Agent is the epitome of everything Zemo despises. So this is not the sort of neat group effort we kind of envisioned the last time we talked.
Yeah, I'm starting to feel like, I know I'm backtracking from my previous two theories a little bit, but as always, you got to realize when your theory is not 100% correct. I think that through, you guys correctly pointed out, Zemo's trying to reactivate a Winter Soldier, and I think somehow he's trying to tear Bucky and Sam apart. Immediately after Winter Soldier starts, hitting these people in the bar, Sam shows a very concerned expression. Then Zemo goes ahead and tells him all it took was, one activation word, and there he is, back to his previous self. So I think that's what kind of Zemo was up to. But I'm starting to feel like, given the track of what they're doing with Zemo and everything that he's doing in the show, I don't think he's going to be the final boss of this season. He doesn't seem like he's going to walk out of this season being like 100% evil villain that he was in Civil War. I think we see a more human and cool side of Zemo, but I also think Zemo's going to try to do whatever he can to kind of mess around with Sam and Bucky, because he still kind of hates them for being Avengers. And that only leaves one villain left, because I'm still not convinced that Carly Morgenthau is going to be the actual villain of the series. To me, she seems more like a victim than someone who is, doing evil stuff. I still think the main villain of this series is Power Broker. So I think the Power Broker is going to be a named famous character that we already know, who's going to be revealed to be Power Broker. And I think that character is none other than Sharon Carter. But I first wanted to just hear everyone's sort of opinions about that theory. Do you buy that Sharon Carter is evil in this series?
It's okay. So do I buy that she's evil, or do I buy that she's the Power Broker? Because those are different things. I think Sharon is very suspicious, and I think it's very probable with the storyline that they're going with her being bitter about the events of Civil War, that she may not exactly be on the complete up and up, but I don't know if she's necessarily the Power Broker. She may be working with the Power Broker, but I definitely need more evidence to think that she is the Power Broker.
And what happened to your Thunderbolts theory? Everything's in shambles this week. But that said, every time you've had a crazy theory in the past that I initially thought was implausible, after I've heard the evidence, I've done a total 180. So yeah, bring it on, Harry.
So yeah, Sharon definitely, as Olivia said, looks very suspicious in this episode. And I guess for me, when you first mentioned like she could be the Power Broker, I was like, I don't know if I would take it to that extent. But one thing that did leave me questioning was like, she's definitely very well connected in Magiport, like we saw, which raised a lot of questions. And obviously the Power Broker would be that connected. And then she also seemed like kind of like distraught when Zemo killed the scientist. Like I remember she had like a very like intense reaction over it. And I was kind of curious about that. So that could possibly mean, that could possibly buy into the theory of the Power Broker. But yeah, definitely a lot of unanswered questions about her. And as like, I forgot if it was Sam that said it, she's definitely bitter and mean now, which can maybe explain some things. But yeah, bring on the evidence for her being the Power Broker.
I think to establish first that she's Power Broker, we have to first establish that she's evil. And I think all of us can agree with that. I would just like to say that she has 100% of motivations to be evil. Think about where she was in Civil War, right? She broke the law to save Steve, which is who she loved in that movie. and then to save Sam, who she thought was her friend. Then during the 2 years after Civil War, between Civil War and Infinity War, they ran, but they didn't even check on Sharon, according to her, about how she's doing. So she went through a really, really tough time during the 2 years. Even Sam even alluded to in the previous episodes, like, what about Sharon? You know, she ran for 2 years and she had a tough time. Like, do you want to go through that again? When he was talking to Bucky about, you know, breaking the law again. So she definitely has a lot of motivation to be evil, because now that Steve has gone back to find Peggy, he doesn't care about Sharon anymore. And then Sam only came to Sharon, you know, coincidentally when he needed her help. So she definitely felt betrayed by her friends. So she has that motivation to be evil. But where does the whole power broker thing come from? I think the first suspicious evidence is how powerful she seems to be in Madripoor. First, she owns all these arts that are the actual real versions, rather than, you know, like the fake versions that they put in museums. I mean, we know that Power Broker is the most powerful person in Madripoor, and Sharon definitely has the amount of wealth and the amount of influence to be that person. Second evidence is this. Some people said, oh, what about that assassin scene? Like, wouldn't they know that she's Power Broker? But here's one thing that they said in the episode. They said nobody actually knows who Power Broker is. Like, Power Broker kind of hides himself, you know, in the background. And I think Sharon could be exactly that kind of character. You know, she doesn't reveal that she's Power Broker, but then kind of just works with everyone else, pulling the strings, directing everything that's happening. And the third, and I think it's the most direct evidence, is when they enter the bar, there is a poster by the wall that says Power Broker is watching. And what is Sharon doing before she reveals herself in front of Sam, Bucky, and Zemo? She was watching everything. She had this hood on. Why does she have that hood on? Like, why does she have to hide who she was if she just didn't want like anyone to see it? You can say she's a fugitive, but literally everybody in Madripoor is a fugitive. So she didn't need to hide, and she's watching everything. And also, you know, she was probably the sniper that killed Selby and that protected Sam and Bucky. She was watching everything all along. And then you might ask, so if she's Power Broker, then why is she sending the super soldier serum out? I think, like Zemo, Sharon began to hate super soldiers. I mean, she worked with Steve, who was a super soldier, and Steve betrayed her. I'm sure she hates Steve by now, because she thinks like, oh, I loved you so much, but look at what you're doing to me now. So we see the destructive impact the super soldier serum has had on Carly Morgenthau. It almost seems like Carly has gone on this path that like each episode she becomes slightly more evil and cruel. And I think part of that might be a side effect of this new super soldier serum, is that it turns people crazy. And remember, in the first Captain America movie, it says the super soldier serum magnifies your personality. So when you're good, you become better. When you're bad, you become worse. And that's what she's trying to do. By distributing the super soldier serum to the world, she does two things. First, she earns money from it, because super soldier serum is a highly valued commodity. But second, she also sends a message. By showing people how these superhumans descend to madness, she shows the world, look, superheroes are unreliable. Superheroes destroy everything. And that, my friends, make her Zemo's friend.
This is very impressive, Harry, I will say.
Yeah, well, like this show isn't, you know, mystery in the way that WandaVision was, but this is still a really sophisticated fan theory. So I'm super impressed, Harry. And just like the last few times where you had a sort of more elaborate theory, I came in just 100% opposed to it. And after the evidence, I think this is pretty plausible. This sounds like a pretty clean, you know, story that we could tell based on the facts we have in front of us. So I still wonder, where does that leave her? Where does that leave us vis-a-vis the Thunderbolts?
Yeah, the Thunderbolts is this. Baron Zemo, I think he doesn't really have, when he says, oh, my work is not finished, when he wants to find the serum and make sure it doesn't go out to the world, his stakes are not the same as when he was in Civil War. In Civil War, he faces Iron Man and Captain America, who were in Sokovia during Age of Ultron, who were indirectly responsible for his family's death. Both of them are gone now. So Zemo's hate will not be as strong as he was in Civil War, which explains why he is more like calm down and kind of like a cool dude throughout this episode. And that is why I think Zemo will become part of Thunderbolts, because unlike Sharon, who probably has a lot of hate and has a lot of work unfinished, Zemo probably thinks, yeah, my work is kind of done here, but I also want to make sure that these superpower individuals don't go crazy. And that's where the Thunderbolts can be his friend. He's still kind of extreme on his methods, I believe. He's still not a hero. He's still kind of villainous at parts. And that's why the Thunderbolts is a perfect fit for him. They're kind of trying to do good for this world by defeating these superpowered individuals who kind of turn crazy. And that's a whole thing with Thunderbolt Ross. Thunderbolt Ross isn't really a hero. He's kind of a villain. He does villainous stuff. He thinks superheroes are dangerous. He even met a guy who got the super soldier serum, went terribly wrong and went crazy by the name of Bruce Banner. So I think if Thunderbolt and Zemo had a conversation in a little bar, they'd be like, or did we just become best friends? They would relate so much to each other with that.
I can definitely get behind the Thunderbolts theory. I think that makes a lot of sense, especially considering how far they're going to develop Zemo's characterization in this episode. I don't think he's the main villain of the show. I mean, even a lot of the villainous behaviors that he exhibits this episode that you could point to are really just Zemo being himself and just not really liking superheroes. Rather, I don't think it's really evidence that he has some sort of ulterior, like, grand plot that's in place that's going to unfold at the end of the show. But I definitely think that it's plausible that we could get Thunderbolts in the future, which would be awesome.
Have we ever had a villain in the MCU who they built up like this, who they made really likable, and then there was a twist where they went evil? I mean, it's always run the other direction. You know, at first Loki's sort of one-dimensional. He's just an antagonist, and then he becomes likable and eventually becomes one of the gang. So yeah, it's hard to. I can't think of another time where, you know, we see a pattern that would support the idea that Zemo is going to turn against Sam and Bucky in the end. Once they make a character this likable, I don't know that that Marvel Studios ever, you know, pulls them in the other direction, makes them a bad guy. But I mean, and this goes back to the sort of increasing complexity of Marvel or MCU villains. You know, we sort of sympathize with Baron Zemo. Carly seems to veer back and forth between, you know, sort of terrorist and freedom fighter, and now potentially freedom fighter corrupted by power. So you know, we're not getting, you know, cartoon villains who, you know, they're just evil, they're just bad, they're just antagonists. I mean, the closest we have to that is honestly John Walker at this point. But the you know, the proper antagonists within the show, I should say the villains in the sort of classic superhero genre sense are pretty complicated at this point in the show. And I think that's, you know, probably something we're going to see a lot more of from Marvel. I think that's what keeps us guessing about, you know, who's even the real villain here. You know, whereas if you watch, you know, a Disney movie from the 90s, you know, Ursula's bad. You know, pretty clearly who the antagonist is. Here we have this big, you know, this 6-episode show. We're halfway through. Who's the bad guy? We can't really say.
I don't think anyone can poke holes in Zemo's motivation as a character. I've heard people try. Actually, I've heard a lot of recently, because of the sort of renewed backstory about him being rich. People are like, well, it might speak to the fact that when, like, you have people who are of a certain status economically within a country, they have certain expectations about safety that other people don't have. Like, for example, someone like Zemo may have different expectations about safety versus someone like Juan and Pietro, and having grown up in the same country, you could make that comparison. But I don't think that's unnecessary. I think it's a bit of a reach to impose that. I don't think it's a reach as an idea. I think it's a reach to impose that on these specific characters.
Is the idea that he wouldn't put himself in harm's way because, you know, he was always rich, and so he's not going to be a supervillain because he just wouldn't, you know, get his hands dirty, wouldn't go out and put himself in danger? Or
yeah,
what? Okay.
It's both that idea and both that it's the idea that people with money or status don't expect themselves to be untouchable, and that's why his family's death hit him in a certain way, which I kind of think an invalid argument, not as an idea, again, just as in respect to these specific characters.
What Zemo is doing, like, he's rich, he was wronged by superheroes. That kind of mirrors something that Sharon Carter has been through. I know that the main topic of our discussion today was about Sharon Carter and her being power broker. And where does that kind of leave her story to go? because I really do think that Sharon's story has a potential to go somewhere really, really interesting. And we know that she's going to come back because she entered a car like all villains do, sits in the back seat and say, let's execute our evil plan to her driver. I mean, that's what all evil crime lords do in movies. So that's why I also think like she's evil. And I think that Professor Carnes, you're right, saying that, like these complex villains, I think, especially in this show, it's really like there's no clear-cut good and evil in this show. I think it's really just even the good guys have personal struggles, have imperfections. Even the bad guys have lovable parts to them. Even the bad guys can make us feel sorry for them for something. You know, it's like what the Joker saying, you know, a bad guy is probably just a normal person who's been through a really bad day or been through something that's really bad. And I think that kind of explains both Zemo and Sharon, if Sharon turns out to actually be the power broker. And I think that's a really cool way to combine the power broker with Sharon from the comics to make a new character that's really complex, going to be instantly memorable. And also remember, Sharon in the comics was also kind of indirectly responsible for the downfall of Captain America at the end of the Civil War storyline. So I think it would be interesting if Sharon kind of takes an evil turn. And I think it makes sense under the context of the story.
Yeah, it would certainly be, I think, just unexpected enough, you know, easy to follow. There's clear hints along the way. But I mean, you know, as someone who's just kind of watching this more like, you know, a casual fan, you know, these days I'm just watching the episode and jotting down memorable quotations. It wasn't something that I immediately saw coming, Harry. So I do like that as kind of a big twist at the end that to a lot of people will seem sort of obvious in hindsight, but they won't see it coming. Does that mean that, you know, Sharon / power broker kind of has to, you know, be vanquished at the end of this season? Because if we're going to have, you know, Baron Zemo join the Thunderbolts, does that mean Sharon power broker is going to, you know, does she have to lose here, or can she go off and still exist in this theory?
I kind of like it when my superhero movies have a third act that's not a huge battle between heroes and villains. That's why I really liked Civil War's Act 3. It wasn't like, oh, heroes trying to save the world from the final boss, but rather heroes got played by the final boss and they must fight each other. And it's a really personal struggle. I have a feeling that's what we're in for this season. I think at the end is really going to be more of a debate than a fight. Yeah, there's probably going to be some fight in between, but I think at the end of the day, I think Sam and Bucky are going to turn Sharon good again. The power broker will die, but Sharon Carter will live on. She'll kind of let go of that past of hers at the end of this season. I still think the final battle is going to be between Sam and US Agent, good Cap versus evil Cap. I just have a feeling that that's going to happen because Marvel still needs a physical final boss for our heroes to fight. I just don't think Zemo, Carly, and Sharon are that. And I think given how we said the US Agent is turning more and more evil, I mean, if they go down this path, he's going to be like the most evil person in the MCU by the end of episode 6. He just gets more and more evil in each episode. So I think that's what they're going to do at the end. So yes, Power Broker will vanquish, but I think Sharon Carter herself will live to see another day in a future MCU project.
To your point about Zemo joining the Thunderbolts, it's just sort of occurred to me that the only real obstacle in narrative that's definitive that I can see for that right now is, do we really believe that the Wakandans won't hunt him down till the end of the year?
Yeah, I had the same thought that, you know, I was just off by a few episodes and a whole show. But you know, my prediction is like everyone, I think there will be a power struggle along the lines of the power struggle for control of Claw and Black Panther. You know, the Wakandans want to take him one direction. In that case, it was, you know, the US and the CIA who wanted to take him in another direction. And I do think we're going to see a similar power struggle here over, okay, who gets to take custody of Zemo? I mean, he literally killed T'Chaka. So there's, you know, and this is where my skepticism that he is going to become this Loki-like sort of beloved character. Loki was a murderer too, but I can't recall Loki killing someone as high profile, as globally significant as, you know, King T'Chaka. And so it's, I guess I don't yet see a narrative way out of this one for old Baron Zemo, because the Wakandans have caught up with him, and that's not going to end well for him, I don't think. So I'm open to predictions, but Harry, I think that's the single biggest threat to your theory at this point is that he's got to contend with Wakanda now.
To everyone's point about sort of the diversity and complexity in characters we're seeing, I don't think we needed Zemo to be like another Red Skull. Like ideologically, he's very different from like the Zemo in the comics, and the whole Zemo in the comics is just like a very complex origin story with relatives and all these different moving parts that we should not go into here. But I think they did a really good job making it work within the confines of the MCU.
So let's first lock in our theory. So we talked a lot about the power broker and Zemo. I'm going to lock in a prediction, of course, that Sharon is power broker, but I don't think that she will be dead at the end of the season. I think she will redeem herself. I still think US Agent is the only person that's going to walk out of this series being evil. I think second, I'm going to lock in the theory that I think Zemo is going to be an anti-villain. He's going to be unlike the other MCU villains that we have seen, but I think he's still up to no good. He's probably going to do something that messes stuff up. But at this stage, I don't think he might be the actual like mastermind behind it all. He might still be, but I think he's an anti-villain.
I will talk about the Wakandans. I definitely think we will learn more about Bucky's arm, and also maybe just more about Bucky's years in Wakanda. I thought we talked about that last time, that we still have some unanswered questions of what exactly he did. So I feel like in the next episode with that whole like, oh, we need Zemo, oh, like we have to send him back to Wakanda, we might learn a bit more about Bucky's arm and more of like his time in Wakanda. So I will bet that we'll learn more about that next episode. And of course, that US agent would just keep getting worse and worse and will be the ultimate villain, because that's what I want to see.
I'll definitely second locking in that US Agent is simply going to continue to get worse. I've been on the US Agent train suck since his stupid smile at the end of episode 1. But I will also lock in that we're going to see Zemo incarcerated in a Wakandan prison at the end of the series.
Okay, and I'm going to commit to that one too. I think Zemo winds up Wakandan prison at the end. And I think we are going to get a final battle where we're going to see, to kind of add a second to Sofia's theory about learning more about Bucky's arm. I think we're going to see an arm cannon. I think we're going to see a claw style sort of sounder energy cannon in a final battle. So I want a final battle with an arm cannon, and I want that wing shield from the first episode to pop back up. I want to see that one more time where Sam covers himself with the wings sort of instantaneously. So those are my predictions. Zemo in prison, in Wakanda, arm cannon, and just one more wing shield. And that's less a prediction and more of a request.
I'm going to add in one more lock theory that I think there's some secret weapon hidden in the new Captain America shield, because it looks so different from the previous one. It has like additional layers on the shield if you really look closely at what it is. And I think these are secret compartments for weapons. We're going to see that shield kind of having rockets and fire cannons. Imagine Sam holding the shield, Bucky with the arm. I'd love that. Marvel, please. And I'm sure that next week we'll have another crazy theory in the store for you. In the meantime, the Duke Independent Film Festival actually happens also on this Friday, starting at 7 to 9. It's going to be on Zoom and on YouTube. We just finished our selection process, and we think that you guys are really going to enjoy the movies that we have in store for you. So please, please, please be there. It's just on your computer. You can be at the comfort of your home or your common room to tune into our amazing show. So thank you everyone for another amazing episode of Different Theories, and we will see you next week.